That woman was a hero. It doesn't take brute force. It doesn't take huge sums of money. It just takes going out of your step for yourself for a moment to reach out and help someone else. Hello, and welcome to Along the Way Life's Journey. I'm your host, Carl Buccellato. Let's get the next journey started. So we've recorded quite a number of these things already, and one of the things I've come to realize is that it's essential to have all your ducks in a row. Sometimes it's just a matter of clicking record, which occasionally has not happened. Sometimes it's a matter of making sure your sound systems and your earpieces or microphones are working correctly, which is why I'm testing this at the moment. But sometimes it's just a matter of chatting. I did a recording this morning with a woman who is a OBGYN, and she told very many fascinating stories of serving people around the world in missionary fashion in Jamaica, Guyana, Haiti, Zanzibar, many places, and on an Indian reservation in South Dakota. And she has wonderful stories to tell, not only about OBGYN, but about end-of-life services and support, and working with people in hospice. And those things are, they're heartwarming. They're heartwarming. They help you to recognize that we live in a very privileged world here in the United States, and so many of us, we're kind of immune to how great our life really is. When you consider how people in other parts of the world live and what they aspire to, and how little it takes to give them satisfaction and joy. Little things. And yet we have so much here in this country. And it helped me to think a little bit. My wife was saying to me recently, there's a whole bunch of little stories that you have that you never included in the book. And every once in a while, while we're chatting, you'll come out with a new story. And that story has lots of meaning to it. And that's true. I was thinking about that today. There's a particular time I remember. It's not in the book. It happened right after Hurricane Andrew. And there was a lot of devastation in South Florida. And we, fortunately, the company that I headed up, had a disaster plan, and we were well cared for. We had lots of supplies, and we were trained and conditioned to have reserves and resources. And all of our team had walkie-talkies and the capability to communicate with each other, even without cellular phones or telephone systems, which were out at that time. And in the early 90s, there weren't very many cell phones anyway. So we all had these connectors, and we made it our business to try and develop a resource for those who had been desperately damaged by the hurricane in South Florida. When you went south of Florida City, there was a lot of destruction, miles and miles of homes with the roofs blown off, street signs gone, trees down. You couldn't tell one street from another, and there weren't GPSs. But we heard the call on the radio from a local radio announcer saying that they were putting together a caravan of cars and trucks to bring supplies to South Florida, and they would be gathering together in a parking lot of a local mall. And so we had a whole team of people with lots of small trucks and supplies, and we were determined we were going to go and help. And there was a whole bunch of 18-wheelers down there that were being loaded with supplies from people who would just come and drop them off. Sometimes just a packet of diapers, other times boxes and cans of canned goods and foods, water, certainly water, many things. So we were in the trucks and loading up these trucks, and lots of people were online, like a caravan of people passing packages from one to the next. And you saw people there as little as, young girls, students, business people who put away their suits for the day and rolled up their sleeve and went out there and went to work. And I noted at one particular point, it was very hot. It was in August. It was very hot. And we were loading these trucks, and there were lines of people truly sweating, perspiring, working so hard out there. And I noticed this one little old lady walking up and down in the ranks of people who were loading the trucks. She was a frail little thing, and she had paper shopping bag in one hand, and in the other hand, she had a bottle of like a water spritzer. And she'd go from person to person and she'd mist them with water and wipe their face so that they would be refreshed from the heat momentarily and take the perspiration off their face. And she went up and down the lines doing this. And then she would disappear for 10, 20 minutes at a time. And she'd come back and she'd start all over again because she refilled her bottles. And she was spraying people up and down the line. And at one particular point in the day, I was on the tailgate of the truck and she came up and she reached up to me and I reached down and she sprayed my face with this mist of water, which frankly felt very refreshing in that heat. And she wiped my face. And as she was wiping my face, I noticed the tattoos on her wrist, on her forearm. She was a Holocaust survivor. And I asked her name, and she said her name was Gertrude Weiss, and she was 84 years old, and she was indeed a Holocaust survivor. But she was out there doing her best to help everybody else, to try and support these people who are in need. She contributed to whatever she could do, which was her own stamina and a bottle of water. And she went up and down that line. And to my mind, it'll never be any different. That woman was a hero. It doesn't take brute force. It doesn't take huge sums of money. It just takes going out of your step for yourself for a moment to reach out and help someone else. In this case, she was helping other people who were helping even more people. So a wonderful lady. I'll never forget her. I hope you enjoyed that story. Now, there was one other story that did not go in the book, and I thought about it the other day, and two young ladies that we've known for some time, and they were visiting here in South Florida, and they are both now new mothers. One of them has a little girl, beautiful little girl, who's 5 years old, and the other has a little boy who's 11 months old. And both of those children were just beautiful. And we were sitting at the lunch table for lengthy afternoon chatting, and one of the sisters was telling the story about how she was assisting her oldest sister, the one who delivered the 5-year-old child, in their home with a midwife. And they turned to me and they said, "Oh, maybe you don't want to hear this while you're having lunch." And I laughed a little bit. I said, "No, it's okay. It won't bother me." And so they were talking about her experience. And they said, "Doesn't that kind of thing, most men don't like to hear those kind of things." I said, "Well, I'll tell you, I have a little experience with it myself, because as far back as when I was 16 years old, I was a young boy coming home from school, and I lived in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, and I was walking up 19th Avenue, which I'd have to take every day to walk to and from school. And just at the intersection there, this cab pulled to the side of the curb, and the cab driver opened the door and he was yelling out, 'I don't know, what do I do? What do I do?' And I looked in to see what was going on. And as I looked in the back seat of the car was a woman, obviously in labor. Now, my mother had given birth not too long before that, and I knew what was going on. And I had taken some courses, Boy Scout courses, so I knew what to expect. And so he was frightened out of his mind, and she was saying, "You got to help me, you got to help me." And so I looked down, and sure enough, this woman had taken her underwear off, and she was in the back seat of the taxi cab, and she was crowning. The baby was ready to come. And there was no way, we started yelling for help from people from the buildings. There was no way to wait. And I said, so the driver says, what can I do? I said, well, take off your wristwatch, because he had a strap on his wristwatch, and your belt, and tie it, because when the baby is born, the umbilical cord is going to be attached. You got to tie it in 2 spaces and distant, and then we'll take your penknife and cut it in between so that we can remove it. And that's what we did. And he was terrified. And frankly, I was terrified. My chest was going ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. But after just a few minutes, other people started arriving, and this little baby boy was born. So the miracle of life was there. And I will never forget that. Everybody gathered around, people gathering around, policemen finally got there, and they took over, and everybody was assisting. And the cab driver was frightened yet, and leaning against the car, his cab. And I just looked down there and I saw the miracle of life. And I'll never forget that. It was a treasure and a gift that a 16-year-old boy learned. I'm going to say the hard way, but it wasn't really that hard for me. It was hard for her. But it was a long time ago, and it's a memory that remains with me. And I hope that story helps you a little bit to recognize that we all of us play a part in this thing called life. And no matter what we have available to us, if we just know that there's a time when we have to get in there and get dirt under our fingernails and just get to work and reach out and help another human being. That's what life is about. We're all part of one race, the human race. We all bleed red blood, and we all of us have the capacity in some small way to allow God to guide us and help another human being in life. So I hope that story is meaningful to you. If it is, let us know. Write in. Tell us what you think about these things. There are more stories in the book that came out of the book that perhaps from time to time I'll do some of these little shorts that are 12 to 15 minutes long and tell you about some of those stories. There are many of them. The book is filled with stories of my life and the parallel of my generation from 1942 right through the end of the 20th century. And people of my generation lived through paradigm shifts of many kinds, politically, war years, economies, education, new businesses, new families, growth, more and more change than you can imagine. Everything is different than it was then. We had I was going to say we had none of these technologies. When I was a boy, we didn't even have television. We played outside in the streets, and when our parents said to come home because it was dark, we'd go home and we'd turn on a radio and listen to a radio. There wasn't even television yet. I hope it gives you pause for thought. We didn't have time to play all day long on the little digitals. Our fingers weren't doing these things. We were shooting marbles in a circle with that thumb. And we were riding our bicycles up and down the avenue and skating and being children outdoors without fear, without threat. Nobody would dare damage a child in those days in Brooklyn, New York. It just was unheard of. And if you got thirsty, you went up to anybody's yard and you took their garden hose and you took a drink of water and you came home. Life was good. So that's it for today. Remember what I tell you every day. Tell someone you love them today. Thank you for tuning into the show. I hope that it resonated with you. It certainly did with me. And I hope it encouraged you to realize the true power of your story. As a reminder, new episodes will be released Wednesday mornings on your favorite podcast apps and also on YouTube as well. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn your notification button on to ensure that you receive updates on new episode releases. I'm grateful for your reviews and your support. The love is certainly felt. Keep it coming. You can reach out to connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, or stop by my website, toeverypageofturning.com. All links are clickable in the show notes for quick access. Do you think that you or someone you know may be our most inspiring guest yet? Let's hope so. Click on our contact page and get in touch on my website and share your story. I look forward to reading each one personally. My best-selling book, To Every Page of Turning, which was published by Mascot Books, is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, and many more popular book retailers. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Till next time, remember that every day is a new opportunity to write your new page in your incredible journey. And it is incredible. You're the only one who has it.